Phelps,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sharpie,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Cervantes,
Yes.
Lyon.
Yes.
And now if we could all stand for a moment of silence and the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sure.
A nice plaque, right?
Yes, it's up there.
So this is a unique situation where I come out from behind the table. But tonight we have a very special recognition that we would like to do here at District 205. You know, there is always someone who can be a trendsetter, can be the first to do something. And oftentimes in our history, there comes a time where there is usually the first person of color to do something significant in our community or any community around us. And today we get to honor what I think is very significant. One of the reasons that I ran for this board was so that all members of our community could have a voice. And I have an opportunity today to welcome up here the daughter of the very first African American board member for District 205. I'm going to read the plaque and I'm going to ask her daughter to come share a few words today. In honor of Joan Millum Kelly, the first African American school board member for Galesburg District 205, 1969 to 1977, lifelong advocate for children. If I could have Karen Kelly Ararula come up here, please.
Well, good evening, Galesburg. My name is Karen Kelly Ararula. I am number 3 of 7 of Joan Millum Kelly's children, and I'm really pleased to be here tonight representing my siblings to honor my mother. It's quite an emotional evening, as there's so many people in this room that knew me as a little girl, who watched my siblings and I grow up. 7 of us, 7 different graduating classes of Galesburg High School, and Galesburg is home. So to Superintendent Asplin, Chairwoman Cervantes, directors, friends and family, and members of the community, I just want to thank you for honoring my mother. Tonight happened a little bit by accident. My mother passed away in 2013. As we often do when family members leave us, I was going through family photos and ran across this postcard that my mother used apparently as a piece of campaign material. That said, vote for Joan M. Kelly for District 205 School Board. I noticed that the date was April of 1969, and I thought, wow, that's been 50 years. And it seemed a fitting and appropriate moment to pause and to honor her for her contributions. As many of you know, if you had a chance to read my remarks that were in the Register Mail yesterday, my parents came here in 1958. My mother had a degree in music education. She had graduated from Hampton University. She had several years of teaching experience, and she wanted to teach music. But she wasn't hired, and she felt strongly that it was because of her race. The fact that she was not able to get a teaching job led her to take a totally different path and to go into social work. She started as a social work trainee, and she worked her way up over nearly 3 decades to become a social work administrator, working in that foster care and adoption. And I think because of her work in social work and because of how she was raised by her own parents who so highly valued education, something about her called her to run for the school board. And when she ran for the school board, she knew much more about children because she had worked with kids in some very tough situations. She herself had been a teacher, and by now she was a mom of several children of her own. And so she joined the school board as a vocal advocate, not only for parents and children, but for teachers as well. If my mom was here tonight, she would be really honored, and she would be so proud that the school board has taken the time to mark this milestone. But my mother being who she was, she would also be asking some hard questions. For her, legacy would not have been only about the past. It would have been about the present and the future. And she would wonder, has anything changed in 50 years? Are we doing better? What is the status of education, not only in Galesburg, but across and around our nation? And she would challenge us all, as she always challenged each of her children. She would challenge us to work harder, to do better, because that would be the legacy that she would want to leave. She did not want to only be the first African American elected to the school board. It was probably more important to her that she wasn't the last. And so I just want to leave with each of us a challenge. Our children deserve so much. They deserve to have an excellent education regardless of race, income, or zip code. And whether you are a director on the school board, whether you're a member of the community, whatever role that you play, there's something that each of us can do to work towards that goal. And that would be the greatest honor for my mother. So thank you again, and thank you so much to friends and family that came out tonight. I know my mom smiled.
Relocating and figuring out how to get home, and that'll be up by the end of the summer.
Thank you again. I will share more remarks at the end of the meeting. Next, we have recognition of our crossing guards. Ms. Ham.
Hey, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Pretty loud. So tonight we want to honor a group of individuals that many of you see every day as you drive through town. We have 15 crossing guards that work tirelessly in rain and snow and all kinds of weather, sunny, some of our iciest days this year, to make sure that our students are crossing safely to our elementary schools and crossing the high school. And their work, oftentimes I'm sure they think that maybe people in the community don't notice what they're doing, but we definitely do. And we had one of the worst winters that I can remember. I keep referencing back to the winter of '79, kind of like that. And every day that we had school, these individuals were there. So we wanted to say thank you tonight for all of their efforts and just let them know how much we appreciate all of their work and all of their contributions. And for many of our kiddos, it's the first smile they see on their way to school in the mornings, and that means a lot. So we have 6 of the crossing guards with us this evening, and if you come up here, we have a certificate for you, recognition. The first one is Kathy Morgan. Okay, next we have Pete, and I think these are all individuals from the same family. So we have Connie Heiliner. Is Connie here? Oh, next we have Ronnie Heiliner. And Johnny Heiliner. Thank you. Next we have Royce Kunkel.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. John Henry. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And Gail Waybright. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I think we have a couple other individuals that might not have RSVP'd. I believe, are you 2 crossing guards as well? You are. Okay, well, come on up here. What is your name? Katie Reed, okay. And Joyce Reed. All right, well, thank you very much. We did not have you on our list, but I do recognize you because you're both at Nielsen, correct? Yeah.
And we love the
Wonderful. There you go, thank you. And you are? Okay, Judy Madiowski, and you are at? Okay, great, well, thank you so much.
I'm glad we did that. Thank you. Thank you all.
Next up, we have recognition of Cole Petrie, our IHSA State Baseball Finals National Anthem singer. Could I have Mr. Rob? There you go.
That's it. Yeah, good evening. I'm Russell Robb. I'm your Fine Arts Coordinator. And yes, through the ILMEA district and state auditioning process, which Cole finished very, very well, the highest honors choir that he could. He was also asked to, at the ILMEA convention in January, he was asked to audition the Star Spangled Banner for the IHSA tourneys, and was selected, found out earlier this spring that he was going to perform, and he did, as you see right there. That's Dozier Park in Peoria, where on May 31st, Cole sang 2 times at the Class 2A semifinals. And so I would like to recognize at this time Cole Petrie and his family.
Next up, if I could have, it looks like Mr. Houston and Ms. Ritchie.
Yes.
Coming up to share with us recognition of students earn the seal of biliteracy and commendation.
Yes, thank you. Members of the board, community, welcome tonight. I have the honor tonight to talk about the Illinois State Seal of Biliteracy. The Seal of Biliteracy, it was established in Illinois to recognize public high schools graduates who have attained a high level of proficiency in one or more languages in addition to English. And I'm proud to say that we have one student from Galesburg High School to receive this honor. If I could get the board to come up, because I've got several students that will be recognizing here tonight. But just so you know, the Seal by Literacy, 23 languages are represented across the state. Only 4,000 awards were given to 70 different school districts. We were one of those school districts, and Emma Wolf was our recipient from Galesburg High School this year. So Emma.
So this evening, we're recognizing the seniors that have earned this honor. It should be noted that we also did have several juniors that earned the commendation towards biliteracy as well. We also had one junior also actually earn the seal. So that's a great accomplishment. But for those students that are here this evening, the commendation indicates that they showed strong proficiency in the language. They may have been very close to earning the actual seal on their school transcript, which can confer college credit for those students. So these students should be recognized as well for their accomplishment in foreign language at Galesburg High School. For Spanish, we've got Dan Fernando. Is Dan here this evening? Also for Spanish, we have Mark Frenster.
School is out, Will and Lane. The last thing I want to do is come to school again.
I know Tavion's here. Tavion James. Also for Spanish. Is Blake Morris here this evening? Blake earned also for Spanish. Cole Petrie. I didn't see Caitlin Pendergast. Also for Spanish for Caitlin. Claire Robinson, also for Spanish.
Average is like the Cardinals batting average right now.
I didn't see Reagan Mudd. Did I miss her? Reagan also earned commendation for Spanish. Alyssa Villarreal, did not see her. She's also commendation for Spanish. I did see Quinn. Quinn Anderson. Jane Breslin, commendation for French. Cheyenne Lincoln earned commendation for French. Samantha Rogers earned commendation for French. Leah's here. Leah Clifford. Commendation for German. Jackson Isley, commendation for German. Harley Kent also earned commendation for German. I did not see Matrix, but Matrix Silver also earned commendation for German. Thank you very much.
We stand up for the
Well,
art
we might as well
ones.
stay here, we got art.
Congratulations to you guys as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board and Dr. Asplin. We now are going to present some awards to our ISA state medalists. These athletes placed in the top 8 in the state. At this time, I'd like Coach Rodney Blue and Coach Chris Pyle to come up. and announce their athletes that did so well at the state meet. Thank you both. Please give them a round of applause. They don't-
Thank you, Mr. Lingenfelter, and our principal, Tom Hawkins, Superintendent Asplund, and the entire 205 Board of Education for giving us the opportunity to recognize the accomplishments of some of our track and field athletes at Churchill. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this is only half of the group that we took to East Peoria a few weeks ago. We qualified 14 student athletes in 12 events, the most at Churchill since 2010, and the 7 boys and girls that are here tonight combined to bring home 12 all-state medals, the most ever in a single season in the history of our track and field program. In order to make it to the state championships, one has to either win or better a preset qualifying standard at the sectional meet, and then a week later at the state championships or an all-state recognition, they have to finish in the top 8 of their respective event. And it's worth noting that there were over 250 junior high schools represented at the AA State Track and Field Championships this spring. So to finish in the top 8 of an event is an absolutely outstanding performance, and we appreciate again the opportunity to recognize our all-state medalists for 2019. And the best news of all for Coach Blue and myself is that all of these young boys and girls are 7th graders. With 1 more year of junior high eligibility. Finishing 4th in the 7th grade girls shot put, Carly Anderson. Our 7th grade girls 4x200 meter relay team placed 6th. That group consisted of Addison Peck, Kiara Kilgore, Alexis Anderson,
Parents were back there.
and Soraya Boyd.
Very nice. I'll expect you for next year, too.
She only gets 1 certificate, but Soraya Boyd also finished
Very
with
nice.
3 individual all-state medals. Soraya finished 8th in the 200 meters, 7th in the 100 meters, and 5th in the 400 meters. Soraya was the first female in the history of Churchill Track and Field to win the maximum 4 all-state medals in the same championships. Our final all-state medalist was the 2nd individual in the history of our school to win 2 state championships in the same year. Only the 6th and 7th in the history of our track and field program to win at the state championships. He also finished 4th in an event, and with the 10 points for the 2 first place finishes and 5 points for the 4th place finish, this young man brought home by himself the 3rd place team championships in the 7th grade AA state championships. Finishing 4th in the 100, 1st in the 200, and 1st in the 400 meters, Plamini Cheka.
Very good, thank you.
Recognition of our art award recipients.
I think it's worth noting, though, that, Galesburg, we've recognized the successes of athletes tonight. Choral event, somebody who went to a state event and sung for us. We just got done talking about some academic achievements from some of our students. And the fine arts students aren't going to be left out here tonight. So if you ask me, I think we've hit all marks here at Galesburg, and I think that speaks highly of our school district and our school system. So everybody gets it. I'm amazed every year at the amount of talent that's in our building, whether I attend a fine arts event or athletics or just walking around the classrooms and seeing the great things that are happening in our school. I love the art show every year. It's just something that I enjoy. we had, if anybody didn't come to the art show, you really should come out sometime. It's really phenomenal. We have 10 different things that we recognize: drawing, let's see, let me get my eyes on, printmaking, mixed media design, graphic design, painting, watercolor, 3D design, sculpture, and ceramics. So those are all the things that are represented in our art show. On your way out, take a look at our award winners over here that we're going to recognize here in a second, but I have to go over real quick. I got outside my comfort zone because I'm a sketch guy, and this is the Principal's Choice Award this year. So I really got outside of my comfort zone, and I went in with a little bit of ceramics here, and I just found this piece to be tremendous. I know Dr. Asplin was able to come out. Also, he gets to pick an award as well. So we're here to recognize some of those individuals tonight. To start with, we want to start with, let me get this turned around. We're going to start with the People's Choice Award. The People's Choice Award goes to Sierra Potassi. And then the Principal's Award, Natalie Cantwell, Ceramic Elephant. And then the Superintendent's Award, Sierra Potassi. And then the Best of Show, Chloe Neal.
Very nice, thank you.
You didn't even give them to the right people.
Might want to get those eyes checked.
Second place, passing our certificate.
We also had somebody receive the Congressional Art Award out of Sherry Bustos' office. And I'll let you say her name because I screw it up every time. It's
Arlen Brandon Sibley.
There it is. Arlen Brandon Sibley. We'll get her a certificate at a later date. We just overseen that. But I would recommend that everybody go out on the wall outside here and take a look at some of the art pieces. They're fantastic. And I think that winner's sitting in the middle, right? Right in the middle. I think it's out there. One of them.
Well, the crow is, but the
crow
congressional, yeah, the crow, that's my choice. Okay, the crow. And just so you know, I had to consult with the art teacher because I had no artistic ability whatsoever. And I said, I am super impressed with this picture. It's a crow spelled or painted with C-R-O-W. And I'm like, that looks really hard to me, but is it hard? And they told me, yes, it's really hard. So that was the one that just stuck out to me. I was super impressed with that. And she also has an award going to the Capitol as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, the People's Choice is the second place for the first one.
Fantastic.
So we got first and second.
Galesburg well represented here tonight, everyone.
That's what they have to start with.
Did you grab your stand?
No, I was.
Never wore your stand. Sports ball game.
State champ, walking with the state champs.
No.
I know. No kidding, right?
Whoever said there's no I in T was obviously mistaken.
Right.
There is none of
He
that.
won the team award.
That's incredible.
That's insane.
I've got it right here. I think you paid too much.
Then he come dirty.
That said so much.
I'm with Deanna. Which
But that's how
House has
it comes back to life.
Okay, now we will move into presentations. In our first presentation, we have from Mrs. Graves on a therapy dog program.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Graves, the principal at Steele School, and up front is Ken Sanner, kindergarten teacher in our building, and by his side is Frankie, a dog in training to be a therapy dog. She is only 4 months old, and she has sat through this meeting so far perfectly, even through all the clapping and movement of the students. She's been wonderful, and this is without any training so far. A therapy dog is a little bit different than the service dogs or the emotional support dogs. A therapy dog is simply needed to provide comfort and affection to people in different facilities. It could be hospitals, nursing homes, or schools. Science has shown how beneficial dogs can be, especially to students. Visits from a therapy dog can help lower blood pressure, heart rate, reduce anxiety, and even increase levels of endorphins and oxytocin. Benefits we would hope to see from our students are lower blood pressure and stress levels, increased dopamine, decreased anxiety, increased positive moods, ease social isolation, and help young readers gain confidence. There's been a lot of research done on the effects of therapy dogs, and it's shown that it can help to increase school attendance, gain confidence, decrease the anxiety, have positive changes towards learning and improve motivation, as well as enhance relationships with peers because they can finally experience that trust of unconditional love from the therapy dog. We were lucky this year to have Sully in our building, who was a service dog, not a therapy dog, and he was intended to be one-on-one with a particular student. Based on her needs and trying to give her more independence, we were able to have Sully work more as a therapy dog at certain parts during the day. Sully assisted in the regulation room to help students regulate their bodies when they were becoming stressed or upset, and really was a great stress relief even for the faculty. The purpose that we would like for Frankie to serve is to be in the regulation room as a home base, to assist students in crisis, to partner with struggling readers to be an ear that listens so they can read without feeling judgment, be a presence in the classrooms during high-stress times, and life skills duties in those classrooms where those students can help to care for the needs of a living animal. These are just some pictures of therapy dogs that are currently being used in various schools and the different ways that they can be used. And we have a short video to play that kind of explains the training portion that Frankie would go through starting in July of this year.
And this is actually the place that we are trying to get her to go. So this is, it's kind of, I believe everything kind of happens by chance. And over a year ago, we sold a puppy because we raised standard poodles. We sold a puppy to these people, and they are breeding Woodles for therapy dogs, and so it just so happened that this all kind of came together.
When he went to school, it made it worse. It was difficult for him, and dogs were what really made a difference for him. My name is Stephanie Alice. I am a middle school teacher. I'm a behavior strategy coach for Sweden. they are asked to do something that's really hard, and they either don't have the skill set to do it when it's hard, or they don't have the skill set to do it when they're emotional. When you walk with Bruce down the hall, you can see kids that are disengaged, that are not really even, like they're trying to disappear into the walls. And Bruce walks down the hall and you can see them light up. The impact that I've seen in 3 students in particular, they spent about 10% of the time in the class from last year. And this year those students, they're with me about 10% of the time. Them knowing, okay, I only have to be able to persevere through this much time and then I can have this, really made that difference. Help them to be successful in class.
So I have like a lot of anxiety, and Bruce, he like touches my anxiety. Whenever I have anxiety attacks, I usually come to Bruce, and Bruce, like, he's so calm, and it like calms me down. It doesn't like distract him when like he's walking around the school or walking around the classroom, because he's not like everywhere.
He's pretty safe around other people, like when I'm like mad or something, they'll like help me. Calm down.
But now that Bruce is in like, you have to like calm down if you're mad or something.
My hope for the future for Bruce in this school is that we get to the point that he is, it's just part of the system, like a staff member. There's one teacher in particular that has, her dad just had open heart surgery. She has triplets. She's a single mom, and then the triplets have had surgery. Stuff's still on her mind, but she can put it aside for a little bit. She comes in to see Bruce. As soon as she calls for him, he like darts towards her.
I think that Bruce impacts the students every single day just by seeing him. They want to do things in order to spend time with him. Bruce spent times where I came to school and I was very anxious and nervous, and he happened to be walking down the hallway and he'd run right in my room. It just brings so much joy to people, and it's amazing how a dog can do that much for people.
A dog, and especially one that is well behaved and trained, but it just makes you smile and makes you happy and you kind of want to be here.
I teach special education resource, and so having Bruce in there to do writing records or to read to them.
It's crazy that just a dog can do that, but again,
they felt much more safe, they felt more relaxed. So it's changed some lives, for sure. Yeah, and Bruce has got tons of cool stories. Everybody's got a good Bruce story.
My hope for our district is that every school in the district has them, and that we develop a curriculum that goes along with the therapy dog. The most beneficial part of having a therapy dog in the school is to have a creature that is always excited to see you, always takes you where you are in that moment, never looks at you beyond what's in your heart, and always accepts you as enough right now, right here. My biggest hope for the organization is to be able to educate districts, schools about the impact that can be made within their school, having a therapy dog, and also provide the financial resources, the education, and the insurance, so those stumbling blocks can be removed. What I need to do is be able to teach him how to calm himself and not always be that calming person. I carry that over to the students I work with and the other adults I work with, but I need to teach them how to be able to do it on their own. In retrospect, I realized that there have been a lot of times in the past years that I have done things to help kids get through things. And this year I do a lot more of helping them to get through it on their own rather than me doing it for them. And he taught me that, and Carrie taught me that, and how to train him, how to teach him, how to help him to be the best dog he can be, which is helping me the best person.
Okay, so that was an educator who teaches in Missouri that she got Bruce from the training facility that we're going to use. And as she said, it's kind of been transformational. We're going to go through a couple of things about some of the training and all of those things. Hold on 1 second. Perfect. Okay, so the Canine Training Camp, they have a 35-day program. It is kind of like a stay-away camp where they stay there and they do all the training. And this, I'm not going to read it all to you, but it just tells kind of the things that they're going to do, because the end goal is that Frankie is going to do what is called the Canine Good Citizen Test through the AKC, which is the very first step to being able to be a service dog. We kind of took a chance with Frankie. Frankie is not one of our dogs, and we kind of took a chance that on her, and I don't know if you know many 4-month-old puppies, but she's pretty good. All the clapping and everything that went on is pretty good. So she doesn't need much training, but she does still have some of those little obedient things that she needs to learn. So a lot of those things are going to be on the testing that they need to do to be able to be successful in a working environment, because you can see that she's very energized and wants to see people. So they're going to focus on things like being polite with kids and other dogs, staying with distractions, things like that. Then that leads into, so after the training, Frankie is going to test. She's got to take a test, just like we test our students. She has to take a test to prove what she knows and that she can accomplish what we are giving her the job of. So the different kind of, you have to go through the 10 steps of the test. So you're accepting a friendly stranger, which she does very well. Sitting politely for petting, you can see that she does that very well as well. So all of these things are important factors that a therapy dog, an obedient dog is going to have to be able to do to be able to work in a working environment with kids. After she takes her Canine Good Citizen test, she has to take another test. So she's not a certified therapy dog after the Canine Good Citizen test. She has to be tested for her therapy certification. So that's another test that she has to take. But the first part is getting through that first stumbling block of the Canine Good Citizen. And then I really like through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs that they want to come out and they want to see you in action. They don't just want to test you in a facility where there maybe aren't people around, or they actually want to come in and see the working environment. They want to also see how the therapy dog would do in a hospital setting. So instead of just testing in one setting, it's multiple settings. And it also, the great thing about being a member of the Alliance of Therapy Dogs is there's also more insurance that if you're a member of that, it's like a second step of insurance. So we'll really have 2 sets of insurance for her. So the cost, the training program is $3,600. And this is just kind of the basics of what our program is. Solely, I know that a rough estimate for Solely was $40,000 for that service dog that we have at Steele, $40,000. So $4,200 looks like a lot of money, but and the drop of $40,000 is a little bit more. So it's a little bit of a chunk, but definitely worth the time and the work that she will put in. So, like I said, the Alliance of Therapy Dogs provides insurance, but we would also have a plan for her, another plan that's based for insurance, just because you can never be too safe. So, the premium would be $200 a year. That's $10,000 if she got hurt at work. They would $10,000 for her, and then there's a $1 million liability. So. For each occurrence. Our timeline for Frankie is this summer we'd like to get her started with her training in July. And then August through December, as she'll be back in August, we would like to have her come in periodic visits, just coming in kind of like she's doing here, meeting new people, seeing where she's going to work, getting to know us and our routines. And then in January, she's going to complete her AKC Good Citizen and start for her therapy dog certification. And then in January, after she passes those 2 steps, she'll be able to join us full time. So there she is. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring her, because being 4 months old and being in an environment that you're not sure of is kind of a scary thing, but I'm glad that we brought her, because like I said, we took a chance with her. She's a really a wonderful dog. The people we actually know that we got her, they live in Wisconsin, and I met them through a service dog agency. And her parents have had 3 litters of puppies. They're now retired after her litter. But several of the puppies in the past litters have gone on to be service dogs. So there's definitely some genetic component with her that makes her predisposed for this job. One thing I want to leave you with is Stephanie said something, and I don't know if you heard it, but she said a quote about the importance of the therapy dog. She said, having the therapy dog is a creature that always is excited to see you, always takes you for who you are in that moment, never looks at you beyond what's in your heart, and always accepts you for as enough right now, right here. And I think in this world with the kids that we deal with, they need that. Because looking at an adult, even if you are nice, even if you show them love, you still come with stuff. Even if you show them that you love them and you build a relationship, you still have those things. And they look at you through those eyes. A therapy dog looks at them in that moment. And the students are able to almost look at them as a more relaxed and really show them the love and kind of calms them down in turn. So, do you have any questions for us or then later or?
Yeah. No, that's, yeah. Oh, okay, that's good.
Well, it's a very interesting presentation. But are you presenting this because are we being asked to pay for this service, or how is that being happening? I'm not sure what, or just let us know that this dog's going to be in the school.
So Ken is providing the dog, and then we would provide the $4,200 as a district for the training and the insurance and shots. Ms. Ham and Ken are going to work together on a contract for the dog, and for Ken, how many years the dog will be in our school as a minimum. And if for some reason Ken were to leave the district, then we would work that out financially. But that contract between them is still in the works.
And then you're going to the Galesburg Public Schools Foundation on Monday night.
Correct. And hopefully the goal would be that we could get them to fund the service dog.
Our goal is to fundraise for the dog.
Does she live with you? Will she go home with
Yes.
you every night, come
Yep.
to school with you every day?
So I would be her basic handler, but the purpose of having her, because solely at our school, he's not available to everyone. He's available to a student because his specific job is a service dog.
Right.
She would be available to everyone, and she would have multiple handlers. We talked about how, like at the beginning of the school year, we obviously wouldn't make anyone be a handler, but I'm sure people would sign up to do it. But we would do kind of a training on the basic commands and things that you need to know and those types of things to be able to have her around.
I generally think it's a great idea. I saw Sully there at Steele, and dogs do have a really calming effect with students. One of my questions is, though, I know some students have anxieties and fear of dogs. How will you handle that?
That's a good question. So it's a really good experience to be able to have them for a learning experience and that to overcome fears. We obviously would never have any students that are uncomfortable around the dog, but it would be a really good experience because it's an experience for students to be able to see a well-trained dog, an obedient dog, to maybe overcome that fear, work with some training and some education to be able to get them to work through that, or even just be able to walk by and see that, okay, that dog is trained, it's not going to hurt me, I'm okay if I don't want to touch it, because even as adults, some people don't want to touch the dog, and that's fine, and it kind of builds them up to be able to be more successful around dogs.
Kenny, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One is, have we looked at other schools to see what the protocols are for being able to transition the dog from a room to another room, or handler to handler?
So actually, when I was going to be at Nielsen, Mrs. Jennings and I had a conversation about there's a organization in Peoria that has facility dogs. That's what they're called, facility dogs. And so basically, it's the same type of thing. So Peoria, it's a little bit of a different process, and then in Dunlap, they have those dogs. So yes, around here we do, and we can probe to find more information. We're kind of in the beginning stages of finding out what we want in the program, what our board wants, what we're looking for, because this program could be anything that we want it to be. So we have some good contacts throughout.
Great. My second question is, are you sure Barb's not taking the dog?
Yeah. Barb wants it, doesn't she?
Okay, I just checked.
There's still lots of steps that we need to take as far as how we want this to look in our building and our district. However, we came to you tonight because we will be talking to the Public School Foundation, and so we wanted to make sure it was something that you were on board for before we requested funding.
And if they do not fund this, would you be coming back to the district for direct funding then?
I think that we'd problem solve through that as far as how we could fundraise and use activity funds and things that we already have in our building.
There wasn't a no.
Good question.
Here, bring Frankie up here and have him look at Maury.
didn't even want to touch it.
Any other questions for us?
And for the allergy component, she is a standard poodle, so standard poodles are the best dog if anyone has an allergy. A lot of people that we've sold puppies to, that they come to us because they are allergic to dogs and they don't shed, so they do have dander. All dogs have dander, but she's a good option for allergy sufferers.
So when we come back in July, we'll know if the Public Schools Foundation is able to help in the project, and then where our source of funding will be before approval. So it's just to make sure everyone had their questions answered, and if we needed to do any other research before next month.
We obviously want you all to be on board before we go out and ask for funds, and also if it's not something that we want to go in the direction of, we want to make sure that, you know what I mean, it's taken a lot of time and all of that stuff, so we really want to make sure that we're all together as a team. So.
Will you still meet your timeline for the implementation if you have to come back at the July meeting?
Yes, we will, because Jim and Carrie, if you have a chance, you should watch that video. You just have to type in Canine Camp on YouTube and you can watch their portion. I cut it off. But Jim and Carrie are really flexible. They offered at first they're like, well, if we can squeeze her in, then we can try to do something with funding. And so they've tried to do lots of things already. They're very, very good people, and they do a lot of great things for their area and their schools.
Any other questions from board members or any serious concerns that would prevent them from moving forward?
Any questions for Frank?
I did want to share that Sully was very well received in our building by both staff and students. We did send home letters to all the students, as well as anybody that would ride the bus with Sully. Frankie obviously will not ride the bus, but Sully did, and we had no concerns or complaints from any of the parents. Thank you, guys.
Next, if we could have Mr. Rob come back up and do a presentation on the ORFF music program and IEP.
Is it touch? Can I use the board? Okay.
Not as adorable as the service dog, but very exciting. We learned earlier this spring of a Title I grant for some ORF instruments. One of the reasons that I thought this would be a good idea, maybe it's not working. Yeah, thanks. You're looking at a typical ORF instrument there in that last slide. Maybe I'll just give you the thumbs up. Would that work? So we'll start with what is ORF, and it was a way to learn music developed by Carl Orff. You may be familiar with Prima Burana, but it was one of his Magnus Opus works, and it basically incorporates music education with movement and drama and speech, and it exciting part of it is the ORF system encourages children to start with what they know, and that's play. And through teacher imitation and experimentation, expanding on things that they've done, personal expression, we hope to promote lifelong learners and lovers of music education, and be creative problem solvers as well, and which is great for our 21st century classrooms. Why ORF? Again, it gives the children an opportunity, and I think this is really neat, to interact with music and to perform in a group before they even learn notated music, where they can read or write rhythms. We can work with ORF and ORF groups. This is a soprano glockenspiel right here is what we're looking at, and one of the neat things about the ORF instruments is the bars can actually be removed, and so we have more chance of success, we have more chance of student self-esteem growth with those types of things. And we can also help explore other state and national standards, as well as our own K-5 essential skills that we're developing. And as a person plays, as anyone plays an instrument, motor systems in the brain control both gross and fine motor skills, and that helps produce sound, and that helps the overall brain development. And the ORF approach to teaching is a model for optimal learning in the 21st century classroom, but down to the nitty-gritty of it, kids love to hit things and hear sounds. And the ORF approach really encourages that and the development of that. And I would also like to mention our teachers are doing a fantastic job of providing lots of different musical experiences to become lovers of music, lifelong musicians. We're not ORF-less, but right now in our buildings, we are kind of a little bit hit and miss, and the teachers do a great job of borrowing equipment from other schools, and this grant that we have will ensure that each building will have equal availability of needed materials for every student, for every classroom, every day. That's exciting if you're me. And so now, what's next? That's the current state of the Lombard Band Room. It's actually the neatest part of the band room right now. And that's the initial delivery that we received a couple weeks ago of our ORF grant. I bid out from 3 places, and actually the most local group, West Music in Coralville, Iowa, was providing us with all of the instruments. And so what I'm going to be doing over the summer is inventorying all the new instruments, labeling them, and then I'll blend them in with the existing ORF equipment that we have at all the existing buildings. So again, we'll have equitable access to all K-5 buildings, all students, every single day. Then on August 14th, Dr. Sarah Burns from Augustana College will present an ORF clinic for all K-12 music teachers, and I guess anyone else that wants to come in. It'd be a good time. And that kind of leads in real nice to the expansion of some of our IL-MEA activities that we have planned. The elementary branch of it provides 3 different things. We're going to try the drum circle this year. It's going to be at Sherrard High School, and we're also opening the IL-MEA auditions that you're familiar with as far as band students, choir students, orchestra, the jazz groups at the high school level. That's going to be available now at the junior high level as well. And our all thought process for this, as summer approaches, we all like the shade, we have to take care of the plants. And our District 205 shade right now, if you will, our top performing groups at the high school, we are enjoying very, very great success with that, and now is a great time to take care of our K-5 student roots as well. Any questions?
That's clever.
There's this little thing called ad animation. It's a lot of fun. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to the next agenda item, approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or anything that board members would like removed from the consent agenda? Allison?
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon? Phelps?
Aye.
Moving to the next agenda item, focus area 1, relevant skills that lead to employability. First on, under that agenda is the administrative report on curriculum. Mrs. Skinner.
I'd like to ask my gifted committee members to come forward, please. If you look on the third page, actually, it will show you all of the members that contributed. As you know, some are already on vacation. There are touring. I know Brad Benowitz is heading west. We had several people participate in the development of this. This is a purely voluntary committee who was completely, the committee members were completely dedicated. We met several times to develop a solid, gifted and talented program, I believe. We're going to just kind of tell you how we went through the process and how we arrived at the plan we have in front of you.
So several of us met several times. And really the crux of our work was research in terms of best practice, definitions, and just overall discussion about what kind of innovative, gifted, and talented programming that we wanted in District 205. We've had a board policy around this for some time, but recently there was a legal mandate dictating that we needed to have a policy in place and a program for early entry for both kindergarten and first grade, and also something that took into account those students that needed to promote a full grade level.
So then next we began reading a lot of articles about different types of giftedness and how to identify it and provide supports for them, whether it be social emotional support or dealing with a student who maybe has asynchronous development where one area is way ahead of the others, and students who are twice exceptional, who are special ed and then also exceptionally talented in an area. We also looked at ways to make the process inclusive, dealing with making this available to all of our students, not just a select group.
And then finally, we looked at several plans that other school districts throughout the country have already developed. We analyzed those, we highlighted and got input from all the members as to the different aspects that we felt that we needed at our district level. And then that led to the papers in front of you and that plan or outline.
All right, very good. We had Richland School District actually had a list of things that they believe, and as a committee we felt that that was important for us to identify in our gifted plan. So you'll notice on the page right following the acknowledgements, page 4, it says, "We believe an effective education involves a partnership among school, family, and community. The district is responsible for maximizing the potential of each student. High expectations foster high achievement and can be accomplished through structure, commitment, and encouragement. And we also believe that in a culture of continuous improvement and inclusivity for all members of the school community." And so we came up with our own definition, which is very closely aligned to the state definition, that a student is considered gifted or talented when his or her intelligence, skills, and or abilities far outpace those of his or her peers. Through various means of assessment, a gifted or a talented student has demonstrated proficiencies that warrant experiences above those traditionally offered in the student's peer and or grade level. Outstanding talents may be present in any student. We want to make sure this is inclusive of everyone. We did notice that there were some school districts that past a certain point, if it was the 4th grade, they no longer evaluated for giftedness. And we didn't feel like that was appropriate because you may find that all the pieces come together at a different time than other students. So we want to make sure that it was open for all. You'll notice that I included the Galesburg School District Board policy for programs of gifted and accelerated placement. And then we have the roles and responsibilities of staff members and parents, how a person goes about referring a student for the gifted and talented evaluation. And then that kind of sets up a process where we meet to determine whether we should continue with the evaluation. And if we do so, Ms. Michaud will talk to you kind of about what that evaluation process looks like.
So we wanted a tool or a scale or process that we could use that looks at the child as a whole. And so what we selected was the Iowa Acceleration Scale. And what this scale does is it not only looks at the student's ability and their achievement, but it looks at their school and academic features, developmental factors, interpersonal skills, and then attitude and support for that individual student. So then we can take a look at all those scores and put it together to kind of come up with where that student is as a whole student, not just in one or two different areas.
So once we have that big picture identified, the Iowa Acceleration Scale actually says that the student may or may not be a good candidate for grade skipping or acceleration. They might be an excellent candidate as well. And so based on that determination, we would have offerings of several things. We have on page 6, actually page 7, gifted and talented programming options. Whole grade acceleration is a possibility, so I may be a 5th grader going to 7th grade. Single subject acceleration, perhaps I'm really gifted in the area of math and reading them on grade level, so maybe math is where I would push forward. I might be a 7th grader taking an 8th grade math class, which would be an option. So in some cases it's mentoring, so maybe there is someone who's got great talent in that field, or even like enrichment opportunities. We talked about, what if a student comes in, we traditionally start band at 6th grade. What if I've been a student who's been taking music lessons or cello lessons since I was 5? Should that student have to start where everybody is just because that's where we offer it, or can we have community partnerships, things like that? And then additional community opportunities and resources. And then on the back, you'll note that the committee will end up creating a transition plan, so we don't want to just evaluate a student and then just send them on their way and not check up on them. There's a point where we will send out, basically it's a Google survey, to the teachers, the parent, the student, and try to elicit some feedback. So if there are some red flags, we can convene again and see where we need to move. Or if we see that the student even needs further acceleration, we would have that opportunity at that time as well. I know that's a lot. Are there any questions?
A few. First of all, is this going to affect immediately?
That's the goal.
Okay, so the students will start being evaluated at the beginning of the school year. And this instrument you're using, is I assume it has some outside validation besides just being able to say that we can identify this? Because it sounds like other instruments I've heard of in the past where it becomes self-fulfilling.
How so?
Well, you start looking at in all these different pieces of input, and you lose sight of what the variable is you're looking for. If you're looking for academic prowess, let's say, but you're looking for parents' input on their emotional status and this, you almost lose focus on what you're doing. Maybe I'm wrong. Is it validated by outside sources?
We
or is
utilize,
it,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
people just like using it?
No. It's validated by outside sources. A lot of districts who already have a gifted and talented program are utilizing this. And we will be utilizing a school site that we'll contract with that will actually do some of the testing, because as you go through the Iowa scale, it makes recommendations as you go forward as to what types of other testing you may want to complete based on where you're at with the student.
And Member Lyon, this is actually something that the Regional Office of Education as well was supporting when they did their training in the fall. When we looked at multiple plans, the Iowa Acceleration was widely used across the nation because of its solid foundation for promoting students and the positive outcomes.
I'm looking at the whole child, not just the parts.
Right. Any other questions?
I have a question. I don't know if your committee's gotten this far, but let's say hypothetically we have a student who is 4 grade levels ahead academically. Have you discussed how far we go with that? Because obviously there comes a certain human element where
That's-
you don't put a 10-year-old in the same class with 14-year-olds all the time.
That's the good thing about the Iowa scale, because it's a holistic approach. It looks at the whole child, so it's looking at that social realm, that maturity, that adaptability, that all those other interpersonal skills and those factors, so that it would, even though testing-wise they may be that high, there may be other areas that would warrant us not going that far.
And so this would be done by subject? So if somebody was gifted in math, is always the easy one, You know, are they considered in that way, or is it looking at whole grade level skipping in the grade school, or is it
Both
looking at-
ways.
okay.
It could looked at both ways. So you could look at the child as a whole, or you could look at it as an individual, when it comes to academics, an individual subject area. We would test in both areas, the reading, the math, the LA part of it, but it will guide us as to what the recommendation would be as far as accelerating or not accelerating based on that, as well as all those other factors.
I think my only, I'm gonna say comment, is that before this gets rolled out, I think some conversations should be had around implicit bias, around the ways in which behavior, education, aptitude, all of those things are evaluated differently based on those biases that we hold, because I do not want this to end up being a program where we are losing or missing out on students' potential simply because they may not come from backgrounds that we're used to working with.
I don't disagree. We also have some work to do to roll this out to staff members as well, just so that they can be more mindful of how to identify students who would be great candidates for this. I mean, we take a Scantron performance benchmarking fall, winter, and spring. If we have students who are scoring in the 97th or percentile and higher, we should be identifying some of those students that, are we meeting their educational needs, or are they just kind of stagnating? We actually read a couple articles about high flyers, and do they maintain their trend of flying high over the course of time with a regular program, or do we need to offer enrichment?
As well as working with the Fine Arts Department and identifying those in that area and realm that would be high flyers that may not be picked up, for example, through Scantron or other types of testing that we might do. We would be educating them also to keep our eye out from that aspect.
Well, I'm going to add one other thing, and this is from previous experience. I am all for making sure that we are trying to challenge every child every day, but I've seen this happen where we have this discussion in, let's say, the first grade or the fifth grade, and we forget about the fact that we are potentially looking at graduating somebody from high school at the age of 15 or 16, and that's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a thing. But what are we looking that far ahead? You know, to what end are we going to accelerate these folks? Are we talking about, and this is a bit hyperbolic, but not really, are we talking about then, congratulations, you now get to work an extra 2 years in your life? Or, you know, I mean, this isn't always a reward. And we need to talk about what is it we're preparing that student for. And we're always really excited at the beginning to accelerate children, but we don't always think about what the ramifications are for that child if we've terminated our curriculum with them when they're 15.
And I think to add to your point, the benefit of the team approach, because it will end up being a child study team that evaluates, does the evaluation, and then comes together with the data. They're able to identify, you know, would this be good for this student at this time? What are some of the factors? I mean, and people have the opportunity to disagree or agree and come up with a great plan. So it's not that this score will determine their future. It's the team reviews the score, all of the relevant data, and then makes that decision.
And then coming back, like she said, with the transition and taking a look at not just putting the student out there, but what's happening, following up, what's going on, you know, are there positives or negatives that we need to be acting on in that realm.
We also tried to make this a manageable opportunity as well, that all requests for gifted evaluation must be made in writing by April 1. Because we know the spring benchmarks are coming out, we also know that's a busy time, but we also want to plan for the coming school year.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that we were looking at all the social ramifications. I mean, it's an exciting thing. I think it's fantastic. We just want to make sure that students aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, and I don't think you do. I just want to make sure that we're putting that out there.
No, I agree. And I want to thank the members of the team that are here and those that are not present tonight. They put in a lot of time and energy to make sure this was an opportunity for students. So thank you very much.
I'm glad we're going to meet our policy goals.
Right.
Right? Yes.
So
All right, do you want to, I'm going to go ahead with the rest of my report. We are working on videos this week. I'm working with Mr. Jacobson to work on, to develop, videos for writing and public speaking rolling out for kindergarten through 12th grade. I just met with the curriculum leaders from kindergarten through 5th grade. We discussed a push and core focus for 2019-20. I'm meeting with the MTSS team tomorrow for a couple hours. We are going to talk about our 3-year phase-in model, where we focus on core instruction in reading, language arts, and math for the coming year. Let's see what else. We are planning on continuing our district improvement team meetings. This coming school year, we determined that we are going to have 3 meetings, a fall, winter, and spring, to kind of align with our benchmarking data, so the principals have relevant information to share out. All the feedback from those district improvement meetings have been extremely positive. Community members not knowing that we were doing some of the things that we're doing in the buildings and some of the activities and supports that we offer, and so we're hoping to engage more members in the future. We also have 10 instructional coaches that are being implemented in the fall. I meet with them from 8 to 3 on Friday to discuss our plans for the fall, work on our instructional playbook, and then formulate plans and guiding documents. We are well into summer school. This is day 1, right, Mr. Bradburn?
Yes, indeed.
And we have a full STEM program in the afternoon, 120 students?
120 students.
How many do you have K-12 in the morning?
We're 195 in the morning with K-8. We're serving about 59 high school students for credit recovery in the morning.
Right. So we're offering a lot of academic remediation this summer. Our
credit recovery students, did you say they were?
In the morning, we're serving 59, and then we've got another 20 in the afternoon. We're going to try to move some of the kids from the morning to the afternoon just for balance, but we're trying to fit their schedule with activities as well. But we've got reutilizing our library and our art room for the credit recovery. It's going very well.
Very good. And we had our first kindergarten roundup, class of 2032 collective kindergarten roundup at Galesburg High School. I don't know if any of you saw photos. We had caps and gowns. Parents were thrilled. It was it wasn't a very long event because we were dealing with 4-year-olds, soon to be 5-year-olds. But we did have a great time. They had a little treat. They were able to all hear the same message in the same location. Ken, you are a kindergarten teacher. What did you think about the event?
I really liked it. I think as a district we're going in a good direction by getting everyone the same information. Because when you're working in different buildings, there's different information. So I think this was another great step to be able to get the same information to all of our incoming kids so that all questions could be answered the same way. It was really awesome.
And Miss Amy Pickrell was helpful in kind of developing a kindergarten handout. So it was a nice booklet for all of our incoming kindergartners and their parents that identified all of the immunizations, SNAP policies, all of the guidelines and kind of the expectations along with our essential skills and standards for kindergarten. So we appreciate that as well. That's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you. Next up are the building reports. Board members, any questions regarding the building reports submitted from administrators?
I had a question that I shared with the respective principals. I'd like to hope that they're included without asking in the future. Their goals throughout the year spoke about improvement on their Scantron assessments. And here we are at the end of the year, and I only found one report that included the growth scores, the achievement of goals. So I would hope in the future that goal progress is included, or sometimes it's not progress, just it's what happens during that year. And it's because just telling us what the goal is throughout the year isn't sufficient. It's also necessary to tell us what's happened toward reaching that goal. I'd like to thank those people that got back to me then.
Okay. Next up, consider approval of the Delabar CTE intergovernmental agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Asplin.
Thank you, and Mr. Houston, please add in any information if anybody has any other questions, but this is a yearly action item we do in the summer. This is part of our GABC and Delabar relationship. It's so that we can access federal Perkins dollars, and there were no major changes to this agreement, but it's our intergovernmental agreement with all the other schools in the Regional Office of Education region, except Mercer County. And is West Central in there? They're not, are they?
They're still listed.
They're still listed? Okay, I don't know that they take part in it either, yeah, but Mercer County goes up to Blackhawk. But everybody other than Mercer County in our regional office is involved, at least on paper, if not in fact. As I said, this is not, there's no major changes from last year.
Any questions from board members? Allison?
Sherpy?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks? Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Next, the special education report, Dr. Michaud.
Good evening. Special education also started there. We don't call it summer school, we call it extended school year. We have 12 students spread out between 3 classrooms, and they're in 3 classrooms because of age range. We can only have so much of an age range in classrooms. They all started today. They're all happy to be here. We also have some students coming in by parents for speech-only services. So those are all taking place at Steele School, where they're 8 to noon if you're out and about and want to stop by. In special education, we are still continuing to look for staff. We are short 3 teachers. We had a current resignation just come in, so it's now 3 teachers and 4 paraprofessionals. So we'll continue to look to hire people.
Any questions for Dr. Michaud? Thank you. We kind of already had E during the presentation, so we're going to go ahead and skip it. I believe you feel like you received direction and support, correct?
We're okay with one, yes.
Okay. All right, next, focus area number 2, facilities that assist in skill acquisition. First under that agenda item are the building study committees. Dr. Asplund.
Thank you. The item I want to update on everybody tonight is the last meeting. I was unfortunately able to attend, but the last meeting between the 7 through 12 building scheduling committee, working committee, and the steering committee. The subcommittee has presented a recommended schedule, and that schedule is intended to reach across 7th through 12th grade so that students can, much of what they were talking about earlier in the gifted and talented area, if they can progress through the curriculum in a quicker manner, or they need a slower manner, they can go back and forth. It can run both ways. But this would be a 7-period day with classes meeting all year in most cases, and semesters in some cases. And so right now at the junior highs, we have a 10-period day, and at the high school we have a 4-block schedule. And so trying to put a 10-period day with a 4-block schedule is, obviously you're going to take what you like from both schedules and try to put that together. And I would like to personally thank all the members of the planning team, the subcommittee, who've put probably a combination of thousands, but I'll say hundreds of hours of study. And I believe went through, Brandy, since you're sitting there, was it 38 different schedules they looked at?
I think we got up to at least 40.
Yeah.
Before we were done.
So lots of different research out there on different schedules, and so now we'll be working with the steering committee to look at that. Galesburg is a bit unique in that our high school schedule is located within our collective bargaining agreement. That's not typical, but here it is. It has been in the contract for many years, so that's something that we'll have to engage the GEA on. But this committee was comprised largely of its members, so we feel good about progress going forward on that. So once again, I would like to personally thank Mrs. Springer, and I see Brandy here and some other folks in the audience were as well, but they went to at least, I don't even know, let's say 12 meetings, and that's the ones I saw. Not to mention all the private study sessions that they had. So I'd like to thank them for all the work that they've done. Not that it's over, but I certainly appreciate the effort that's been put in so far.
I want to echo that. I think that embarking on this change and taking the time to consider not only 40 different schedules, but to really debate, hash out, put issues, concerns, hopes onto a table and just say, here, now we've got to go back and forth. And I was a witness to some of those conversations, and, you know, I think that folks were honest about how they felt about things. There was acknowledgement that after 40 different iterations, there wasn't going to be a perfect, but how close can we get so that we are acknowledging that this is a 712 complex and that all of our students are going to have access to a wonderful, equitable education. And so I really, really do, I think, because that is time on top of time, and time away from other things they could have been doing to try and work that out, so I appreciate it.
Well, and I thank you for reminding me. I should have said this was all, we did not provide release time for this, for anybody out there listening. This was after school. This was at whatever else time they were doing. It wasn't like it was during the day. I mean, this was time that people volunteered of their own accord, and you know, Member Cervantes was on there as well. And you know, when we really talk about what's wonderful about this community, I counted up so far, and I stopped counting at 150, I'll be honest, but I counted up the number of people that are on these different study committees, and we're at over 150 people. That's teachers, non-certified employees, board members, administrators, students, parents, community members. We've tried to get a cross-section of the community to try to get as much input as possible, and this is all outside of regular school time. That these folks have been volunteering their time, and we really, really appreciate that, and we're going to need to continue to have that input as we move forward.
Any questions from board members?
Sounds great.
Next, we have an update on district building projects. Ms. Ham.
Next month, we will be bringing bid documents for Lombard and Steele School. We are progressing nicely on the completion of those. King, we have a budget meeting this week to look at the budgets and see if we need to value engineer anything beyond what we've already had discussions on, but we're moving forward with that. And some preliminary conversations have started with JHS. So the one thing that we are anxious to see from the state, and it's going to take a little time, is you may have heard that they passed a $45 billion capital projects bill. There is money that is included in that capital projects bill for schools, but unfortunately, unlike some of the other projects, it's not going to be streamlined. There is a committee that is going to be formed, and the governor is going to appoint individuals for that committee, and then recommendations will be brought to the legislature in March of 2020 as to how those funds should be allocated. So we're hoping somewhere in that process that some of the funds that we would need could potentially be applied for as part of that capital development bill, but that is yet to be seen. So we're progressing nicely. A lot of work is going on. And we will be slightly delaying the demolition of the Zephyr Dome. It was due to start next week. We are working with the Illinois State Historical Preservation Association on some final pieces that they need. We had to hire a couple of consultants to come in and do some recordation and documentation of the building. And that is expected, the field work, to be done here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then we will have the blessing to move forward with demolition, and then those 2 consultants can complete that work after that time, so.
Mrs. Ham is to be commended for getting that work done. We were thrown a curveball by that agency down in Springfield at the last minute regarding the demolition of the building, and within about a day's time, she was able to get them course corrected from a timetable of 6 months to about 6 weeks. So that was all on her efforts, and I certainly appreciate that.
Any questions from board members? Mrs. Ham, I will not be in attendance at the next board meeting, so if there's been any changes to Lombard and Steele, can I see those before that meeting? That way I can offer my questions or anything.
So Ron's going to lead the meeting, so we look forward to a short meeting then, right?
Yes, Member Lyons.
Right,
July,
Amy?
the historically shortest meeting.
We're moving everything to the consent agenda.
Is always hosted by the vice president of this board, as long as I'm sitting in this chair, because I'm never here for the July meeting, and it's always the shortest. All right. Any questions about the enrollment report? I will just say that for some reason, there are still some things that are not showing up on my board member link side, so I'm gonna have to work with somebody. Next, consider approval of the consolidated district plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Courtney, thank you. And I believe this is Mrs. Bringer.
Yes.
Yes. This year, they combined our grant application process, so all of it is just in one fail swoop, like one document, but it's probably, 35 pages long?
At
It
least.
took us hours, and then ISB's site was being very much cooperative in deleting things that we were typing, so I've got to save documents separate in case the whole thing falls apart, but it just outlines what we're doing for school improvement, how we utilize the funds from Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, Title V, and then IDEA. And pre-K, yes. And it just, this year was the goal from the ISB was just to consolidate all of those so you're not working through 6 different interfaces for all the separate grants.
Any questions? Allison?
Walters?
Aye.
Banks? Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Is there a reason why we didn't have a link to what that looked like?
Because I didn't have anything to put with it.
In the future, we probably should, because we're being asked to.
Dr.
I
Esplin-
trust you fine.
Yeah.
but we
Dr.
should
Esplin
see
just
it.
said it might be easier if it was explained to you in person.
We can print it, scan it, and attach it for the next round.
Okay, next up, consider approval of Presence Learning contract for psychological services. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
So this year, we finished our first year with online psych testing due to the shortage of school psychologists. We need 3, we have 1. So we will have a psych intern, but he's not qualified to actually step forward with the job. He'll be in training with us next year. And so we will need to rely on this online psych services again. We're looking at the same cost factor as we had this past year, no cost increase.
Any questions for Dr. Michon?
What was the total expenditure this year for them?
It was supposed to be 60,000, but what happened in the beginning is, like happens in special education, the psychologist that we were given through online resigned. And so we contracted with some local agencies. So we spent about 40,000 with Presence Online of the 60 we had projected. And we spent about another 18 to 20,000 contracting through some retired people to help us stay caught up at the beginning. Once it got fired up and going, it moved smoothly, but it was just a little hard getting going. They have the same issues we have.
Any other questions? Allison?
Banks?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Next, consider approval of power purchase agreements for Steel, Lombard, GHS, and Lincoln. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Asplund?
Stay awake.
Thank you. At long last, after many different iterations and getting all the versions correct, we are ready to recommend an agreement to purchase power for 15 years with 2 5-year options from the district side. To purchase power from the solar arrays. So at Steel, that solar array will be on the southeast corner of the district property. At Lombard, it would be currently where the Lombard Gym is, and south of that along the fence line, and then also on the roof of the building. At GHS, it would be behind Rose Hoban Welch, and it would be trenched over, and I'll explain why that price is a little bit more here in a minute. And then out here, it would be on the northwest corner of the south lot over here by the baseball, where the baseball backstop is, where there's practice going on, and we've got to get with the baseball team and explain to them that they can't use that spot anymore, but it's just used for practice, it's not used for games, so that should not be an issue. So the price we would be paying for Steele, Lombard, and Lincoln for this building would be 2.65 cents a kilowatt hour, which currently we're paying roughly 5.6 cents, 5.8 cents. All in, and so the price would go up 1% a year for the 15, and then if we continued the 5 more on each one. And at GHS, it would be 3.75 or 3.45 cents, and that's higher because the cost to put it in is more, because they had to trench the power a lot farther. And so they would not realize the group investing wouldn't make the money they needed to if they put the price at 2.65 cents. But we don't really, I mean, yeah, I'd like it at 2.65, but it's still a lot lower than it is now, and that's where we're using the most power. That's the biggest array. The savings for next year would be, astronomical already. We're already over $100,000 in savings in year one. And that's just by allowing them to put it in. So there are other savings that would be realized from that as well that we cannot put into numbers. And that is because it is regarding your capacity charges, and I'm really going to get boring for people here. But and this is anybody at home too, so if you go home, Dwight, and you listen there, if you go home and look at your power bill, there's a capacity charge point on your bill. That's because it's the highest point of usage in the year. Whatever you use the most that year, you get another surcharge on top of that, okay? That's anybody out there. It's if you have a power bill. So we don't know what that number will be reduced to because we have no way of predicting that. But every year after that, that capacity charge will be reduced as well. So as I said, I believe last month, Farmington, where we put in the solar field there, the capacity charge lowered the field like another $100,000 a year. So I mean, these savings are astronomical, but we can't quote those. So the $100,000 in the first year is not including those capacity charges, which you don't really experience till year 2 anyway. But this is a huge boon to the district financially. It's a great thing for our students to be able to see alternative energy. It's parts of our facility that we aren't really using anyway that will be fenced off, and that's paid for by the people putting it in. The area inside the fence we don't have to maintain, nor should we. So that's borne on the back of that group as well. So we really have very little risk. The only risk that we really have is that if power somehow were to go below 2.65 cents a kilowatt hour, if Ameren started selling it to you lower than that, well, there's no data out there that would support that. Okay, so we're really looking at a tremendous amount of savings moving forward, and so I would highly recommend we approve this. And Mr. Feeney's law firm, after lots of discussions and looking at things, we feel very satisfied with the terms of this now. And all the issues we brought up last month have been resolved in our favor. And we were able to negotiate down the price of GHS's a little bit. So we feel good about the price, and there aren't really any concerns legally speaking at this point.
So a question I have, last meeting, we did have a special meeting because we had to have it approved by the end of May, or things were going to change. What happened to that clause?
Great question, great question. So the state did not let us know, but they did until it was very late. they relented and said because the auction came so late, they weren't gonna hold everybody to that May 31st date, because nobody got the information until May 5th. And so there was enough people screaming about it that the state went, all right, we'll give you a little bit more time. So we were assured that we were still within the window of time, and so that's why we didn't have to have the emergency.
Well, the picture shows where the field is. What's on the ground below these things? Grass grows there? Do they gravel it all in?
Well, they said they're responsible for making a maintenance-free ground cover, so that could include gravel, that could include like Vinca vine or some type of ground cover like that, but
It
it
should
won't.
be better in terms of.
Right, but it won't be just weeds and, grass growing out that end. No, it has to be a maintenance-free ground cover.
At the high school, the area that you're putting the solar panels is currently used by soccer. Will they have places to do their soccer in?
Well, there's still part of that field there, so we feel like, there is still soccer field available. It's just not gonna be maybe as much as there was before. But there is space there, and for the amount of, well, quite honestly, looking at the west side of the football field, we feel like there's other space over there that's not being used currently for that. So if they need to move over there, we initially wanted to put the solar panels over there, but that trenched too far and it was too much cost, so we couldn't get that. But we feel like that's available space that could be used for that as well.
Well, that JFL or junior high football will be there.
And they'll be there during right
They'll
after
be on the
school.
west, yeah.
Okay. Does soccer go right after school?
Yes.
But there still should be enough room.
I'm just here,
Yeah.
I know it's going back there, but I have no idea how much of it.
It's basically in line with where Rose Hoban is, about a little bit to the west of that.
It should be fine. I haven't seen it.
So another question I have on these solar fields is, are we sure when we put these that we don't need any of this space going forward for anything? Because we're tying these up for 15 plus 2 5-year options. So are we sure that, I don't want to happen like happened at Lombard and we were ready to raise a building and then whoops, we can't. So if we done due diligence to know where we're putting these fields, they're okay, that you don't have to come back to us and say, whoops.
Well, we'll go to each building for a second. So the answer is yes. But at Steele, for instance, it's down in that southeast corner. We would never expand the building that far anyway. I mean, it's past the playground and it's in a spot that we're not gonna do anything. At Lombard, we are now to the point where we're putting it on top of the roof. There's no way to really build out to where we're going anyway, because of, on the east side of that, there's the geo fields. So, we feel like we've maxed out that space as well. Out here, we're across the road, or we're across the parking lot out there. There's not gonna be another use for that. And if we do need other uses for that, there's plenty of space to the south and east and west, or mostly east and south of that. And then at GHS, you're talking about behind another building, and another building. So we've got, there's really no space there that we could envision having any need for in the next 25 years because we already have our athletic facilities. We already have our academic facilities. If we were going to add on to GHS anymore, we would, if something crazy ever happened and there was something that we needed to add on tremendously more, we have that space where Gale is to be able to add on there. But there's not really, I can't foresee any use that would ever get in the way of us being able to put this on there, especially considering, I think we can make accommodations for whatever we need considering the amount of money we're going to save for an amount of limited use that we might be talking about with those places.
And what happens after the 15 years?
They are responsible for removing those items
If we don't want to.
Right, so it would likely be 25 years, but, we do just need to talk about 15, 5, and 5. It's the responsibility of the provider to remove those. So they won't just sit there. Like, that's one of my I can vamp here for a second. That's one of my concerns about the
Right.
windmills everywhere, that those things are, you know, we're gonna be looking at those like we did the coal mine cranes here, you know, pretty soon they'll just be sitting there and not being used. But no, we made sure that these would be, the responsibility of the owner to have to take them out.
Will they be bonded to do that, or is what, 25 years from now, they're not
In business.
in business? And we go to say, hey, you need to take these down, but they're not there.
Well, then at that point, we would probably have to go into a little bit more legal wheeling and dealing. The other nice part about that, though, is if they don't exist anymore, and then it would go back to, we would own them, to where they still would have use, and then they would be free. I mean, then it would just be ours, and we wouldn't have to pay anybody to pay for the power.
Is that correct? Do you agree with that? You rolled your eyes for a second.
I don't think I rolled my eyes. There's not an explicit bond required in the contract. There also is assignment language. It's very likely with these types of agreement that the entity you're dealing with on the front end is probably not the entity you're dealing with 20 years down the road. That's not something that they were going to concede on to give up assignment. So that's a little bit of an inherent risk anytime you tackle something like this, is that that could happen down the road. But it would, if they failed to remove, there's an option to purchase or removal. If they failed to remove, they'd be in breach. You'd have contractual remedies. Whether those are attractive 20 years down the road, it's hard to predict.
But to whoever takes over this company at some point, they do or have the responsibilities of honoring the contract.
Correct. Whoever, if it is assigned, the assignee under the contract would take under those terms.
The one concern that I have, which I had mentioned at the last meeting as well, but with the exception of Longwood, all of these panels are located, out of line of sight, behind a building, tucked away a little bit, behind a tree line. Longwood is right there in the middle of all of the community, the homes, and so that's my concern, is the aesthetic impact that it's going to have on homes, whereas the other sites isn't. And you can't do much about it because of the location, but I do feel that does need to be brought up and mentioned.
Well, I think that's a fair statement. I guess it's, beauty's in the eye of the beholder on that one a little bit, Having lived with them before, I thought they were pretty cool. But, I'm sure there's going to be somebody that doesn't like it. But there's not really a way to sugarcoat that they are going to be sitting there, you're 100% correct. And they will be sticking out a little bit. But they will be behind a fence for most parts of that, so it's already in an area that's kind of off limits. But I can understand some of that concern at Lombard. It was either that or move it down to the south field, and we felt like this was the better of the two options.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I think it's a great idea. Save us a lot of money, have renewable energy, and utilize land that we're not currently using.
Our link shows the old pictures from Lombard.
Well, it's not.
Because we're putting on the roof.
Yeah, no,
Right.
they did send the updated ones because they actually.
Oh, that's right, you sent
the old
that,
ones.
that's right. It's a separate attachment. I saw that.
I agree, I'm all for saving money. I think probably just a few more conversations with Mr. Matthews, just so we have a plan of action, so that when some of these organizations start to kind of say, hey, that's my backstop. It's not there anymore. We have some plans.
We could certainly put a backstop further south, couldn't we?
Well, out here, I'm not gonna be, if we need to build another one, we'll do it. For the amount of money we're saving, we'll figure it out. It's just, if we felt it was better put over by the train tracks and right next to the road. So if we need to then.
I see the kids out there practicing all the time.
Sure, absolutely. Once it gets
I know
put
it's
up,
hard to find practice fields.
if we erect something, that's minimal cost for the amount of savings we're talking about. So, yeah, just so long as we put it up so it's not hitting balls at the thing, obviously, that would be a big mistake. But yeah, we can figure that out. Yeah, it would be a bad idea.
Any other questions? Allison?
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Next focus
Take a
area.
break. It's been 2 hours.
How long? Tomorrow?
5 minutes?
They don't want to.
Okay, keep going.
Focus area number 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. We'll play like we're in college classrooms. You have to go. Responding to the changing needs of our community. First up, consider approval of the resolution authorizing and providing for an installment purchase agreement for the purpose of paying the cost of purchasing real or personal property, or both, in and for the district, and for the issue of $17,025,000 debt certificate series 2019 of the district for the purpose of improving the sites of building and equipping additions to and altering, repairing, and equipping school buildings and facilities of the district, and authorizing the sale of said certificates to Commerce Bank. Do I have a motion?
Just tell them no.
So moved.
Second. All right, Dr. Asplin.
Thank you. Kevin Hyde is here from Stifel Financial to kind of give an overview, so I'm really going to hand it off to him. Kevin.
Poor guy.
Don't feel sorry for Kevin. He wrote those words. That
was Kevin, the attorneys that wrote those words. Yes, so this evening, this is kind of the first phase of the final project financing that you're wanting to undertake for all your facilities. With some of the items not being able to be done as life safety, we're going through the funding bond approach. And a funding bond is a bond that's like a life safety bond, but it's paid back by property taxes, but it is used to pay a claim or an obligation. And so this is, in essence, creating that claim or obligation that will be outstanding for a very short period of time. And then once we get through the funding bond approval process, the funding bonds will pay off the debt certificates, and then money's available for you to go ahead and finish those other projects that didn't meet the state's life safety criteria. So happy to answer any questions you might have. We did get 3 bids. They ranged from $240 from Commerce, $275 from a collection of township treasurers in South Cook County, and then $314 from Sterling National Bank. Commerce is also going to hold the deposit during the time we're waiting to issue the funding bonds, and they're going to pay you 0.75% of the deposit, so your net cost is only going to be 1.65%.
Now, Kevin, can you explain then what we're going to be asking next month then, so that they understand how this kind of sequence?
Sure. So after the closing, which I believe is scheduled for the 20th, on the debt certificates, the next month the board will authorize a resolution of intention to issue funding bonds. And at that point in time, then there's a 30-day notice period that starts following the publication the next day to the public in terms of issuing the funding bonds. Once we're through the 30-day time period, then we would actually go forward with the issuance of the funding bonds. Again, and then at the closing, the money gets wired to Commerce to pay off the debt certificates. The deposit is there at Commerce then for you to go ahead and spend on the project.
Okay. So, because Matthew and Nick are sitting over there, and I want to make sure they report this correctly. So, we all know the answer, but we just want to say, so are we asking for more debt or different debt?
Different debt.
Thank you. So the total amount of debt is the same, we're just looking for a different structuring so that it gives us greater flexibility in how we spend it.
Correct. This gives you much broader flexibility. You're not limited to just whatever the state approves as life safety. It's basically that laundry list of potential projects, all of which pretty much qualify then at that point.
Right. So it's the amount, we still have that amount of health, life, safety bond authority. We're just not exercising it. We're just trading that out. So, the numbers equal 0 in terms of what the difference is.
Correct.
Any other questions from board members? Okay. Allison?
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Sharpie?
Yes.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks? Frontas?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Next up, consider approval of prevailing wage resolution. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Mrs. Ham.
This is an annual process that we have to go through. The process has changed a little bit. There's been some confusion, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to approve the resolution because now the state has changed their processes a little bit. We kind of had some conflicting information between the regional office and our HR consultant, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to approve the resolution just stating that we follow prevailing wage.
Any questions from board members? Allison?
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Sharpie?
Yes.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Next, consider approval of hazardous transportation areas. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Ham?
Tonight, we are not recommending any additional hazardous transportation areas. We're actually recommending to drop one, which was for 1 year, the location by Nielsen School with the overpass. So that allowed us to be able to bus our students during that construction and to receive reimbursement for that. Since that project's done, we're actually dropping that request, and we have not added any new areas at this time.
Any questions for Mrs. Ham from board members?
Perhaps you can share with us at a future meeting what areas are considered hazardous, so just that we can address if somebody ever asked us that question. I'm curious what crossings. Thank you.
Any other questions? Allison?
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Next, consider approval of the PSIC property casualty. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Ham?
Before you tonight, you have our renewal statements for property and casualty. Last year, our expiring rate was $196,059. We're seeing an 8% increase in that premium for a total of $211,863. When I went to the PSIC annual meeting, there were quite a bit of there were several school districts that were concerned about this increase, considering here we have not entered a claim since we had our large claim on the old gym a couple of years ago. But the explanation we received is that the Midwest has been historically low where property and casualty insurance and reinsurance is considered, and that with the number of tornadoes and hail damage and straight line wind damage that we've received in the last couple of years, that the insurance companies are kind of catching up in essence. So this really has to do with more of our reinsurance. So they said that there were other areas in the country that were seeing anywhere from 15 to 25% increases in property and casualty. So although I did not like the 8% compared to 15 or 25%, you know, that's obviously much better. But that was the explanation from our cooperative.
Any questions from board members?
So this is a cooperative, so you get bids. I mean, do we have other options to bid this out?
We do. Because we are part of the cooperative, there are some timelines that we have to adhere to. So if that is something that the board is interested in doing, we would need to give notice by November to PSIC that we're going out for bid. It's a pretty cumbersome process, but Bushu Consulting, who we work with, will help us through that process to do that.
And I have to make this comment. Our loss ratio is 0% in 17 and 18, and we still go up 8%.
Correct. Because we're part of a cooperative.
That's one problem with a cooperative, is sometimes you pay when someone else has a bad year.
Correct.
So in the insurance of the 17 other vehicles, are those, do we have that many maintenance vehicles?
Well, that's between our driver's ed cars,
our activity buses.
Oh, okay. That's not under buses?
No, not the activity buses.
No, by insurance purposes, they're not considered buses. They're-
We have 7 of the yellow buses, mini buses, I thought we only had 3.
No, we have 3.
We're paying for 7. I don't know, it's just, I don't know where these numbers come from.
Where are you looking here?
To look at that.
All other vehicles, 17.
The buses,
Yeah, because
7.
we only have 2.
We have 4.
We have 4 buses.
4.
We're going up there.
That's less than 7.
Wait a minute, so maybe they,
Maybe the activity buses are.
maybe they're counting the 4 and the 3. Typically, those are not counted as buses, those are counted as other vehicles, but they might be counting those as buses.
I don't know.
We have the 2 box trucks that we deliver.
Right, food.
And then we have 7 maintenance staff members. And they each have a vehicle, so that's 9. The director has one, that's 10. We have 2 driver's ed cars, that's 12.
Okay, just seemed like a big number. We're still
We
at
had one get
17.
stolen last year?
We did have one get stolen last year. Yeah. We had a maintenance
Good
vehicle
thing we
get
have
stolen.
insurance.
It was those couple of folks from Indiana that came over and robbed a store and then came over and stole one of our trucks.
Oh, that Walgreens, that was the
Yeah.
driver's ed car?
No, not the driver's ed car, it was a maintenance truck.
Interesting.
Now, if we did give notice and bid this out, is there a strong likelihood we would see more than an 8% increase, or would we actually see some cost savings?
I'm not really sure. So we haven't bid this out in a number of years.
What I can tell you is if there's a dividend that's given out to the members on a year that you say you're bidding it out as part of the Articles of Agreement, you don't get the dividend. So that's how they try to hold you in. We haven't been seeing dividends, but, you just never know when it comes. So that's, the advantage to co-ops is typically you're gonna smooth out your your rough edges. But the bad part for District 205 in this particular co-op is we're the biggest entity in it. So, we still kind of can hit some of those things by being, you don't always want to be the biggest one in a co-op because you're still kind of steering the ship without all the control. So we have looked at the numbers and considered bidding it out before. So if that's something people are interested in, we could absolutely look at doing that next year.
What's your recommendation?
The problem was right now, the biggest reason we're getting increases still is because of the gym. And it would depend on what the industry, we need to talk to a broker and find out what the industry is going to say in terms of, are they going to look back that far to count that loss? We don't want that year in whenever we do anything. And so the other part of this too is as we start to shed ourselves of property, I'm not saying one way is better than the other. We need to really get some professional opinions on that as to when it's a good time to jump, when we know we're going to be shedding ourselves of property and adding new property in. There's some machinations in there for how insurance is going to quantify that as to whether or not it's better to be in a co-op at that point or not. So this will be a good time to at least reach out to an agent, somebody who does this for a living, and kind of lean on their expertise to see if this is something we should be doing or not. And to try to get a professional opinion on when's a good time to bid and when's not. So we should probably look for that and try to find somebody who wouldn't be bidding on our work so that we get an honest opinion.
So approve now, but.
I would recommend we approve now. We really don't have a choice because otherwise we don't really have insurance.
So that's our investigating.
Yeah, we have till November to make the decision. And once we make the decision, all we've really risked is a dividend that we've never seen. We could still elect to stay in even after we elect to go out for bid.
And you mentioned using Bushu. Aren't they the human resources consultants?
They're also insurance.
They are, and they do insurance as well. Any other questions? Allison?
Sherpy?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon? Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Next, consider approval of PSIC workers' comp. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Nobody wanted to make a motion earlier, now they all want to make a motion. Ms. Haynes?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as distressing as the 8% increase in property and casualty was, we are looking at a 14% increase in workers' compensation this year. I do want to point out that there is some slightly good news on the horizon in that our 2018-19 experience mod was at 1.51%, which is terrible. And now we are looking at a 1.27% in 2019-20. We've really put some measures in place where we're utilizing the risk management advice from Gallagher and Bassett. They come twice a year to take a look at things. We're using iWork. We're closely monitoring anyone who is putting in a workers' comp claim, so we are requiring return to work documentation, all of those things to ensure that our mod was lower, and those efforts did work and show fruition. Unfortunately, because the reserve has to be held for up to 4 years, is what we were told, for workers' comp, because the payout is so long, we're still paying out claims for individuals that have retired from the district. So they have to keep those in reserves, and in essence, our premium will reflect that for probably the next 4 to 5 years. But we are making progress in lowering that.
Right, and I know it's late, but just because we want to make sure we're transparent. So experience mod means that 1 is the industry average. So that year is the average experience of workers' comp for all like agencies in the region. And then our experience mod a year ago was 1.51, which means we were 51% worse. Okay, so this year we went to 1.25, which means we're 25% worse, which is still bad, but it's 26% better than it was the year before. So we are working on reducing our exposure there, and some of the things that had been done in the past, quite honestly, and I'm not going to use names obviously, but the district had been a little beneficial and generous with some employees who were allowed to hang on who really weren't working. And so that experience, even though it was benevolent and kind, is making us pay more money now. And so we had to do some things in the last year to work out some severance agreements with some folks who hadn't been working for months, if not years. And so we are, that was a good thing to do. It was nice for those people, but just understand we're going to pay for that for a few years.
Any additional questions? Elson?
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Next, we have a discussion of human resources position. Dr. Asplund.
Thank you. Okay, so I gave you all handouts earlier. I know I talk loud enough and it's late, so my so we are asking for the addition of a human resources generalist. We brought this up a few months ago, but we kind of let it go, and because we had a lot of other things going on. And so we wanted to make sure that we quantified the amount of savings that we've had in terms of administrative support and clerical changes since fiscal year 16. So the handout I just gave those two fine gentlemen over there shows all the amounts, all the positions that we have reduced through attrition, really attrition. Some cuts at the beginning. We're down 11 positions since 2016 that have been absorbed by other people. These aren't teaching positions, okay? This is totally absent of that discussion. This is just administrative support. So we've attrited down 11 positions, and we feel that we are now at a place where we need to capture back some of those savings. And really looking at an HR generalist position. We used to have an assistant superintendent for HR. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an HR generalist, which is somebody who is trained in human resources, who will handle all the intake of new employees, in 2 of our contracts this year that we negotiated with our non-certified unions, we negotiated in training periods the 15th of every month. That's something that has to happen contractually. We need somebody to coordinate those. That any new employee training that comes in, if you're a substitute, you would get trained. If anybody that's coming in on the 15th of every month is going to get trained, going to get all their intake papers, make sure they've got their insurance done, all those things. We really just need a lot more coordination with the high amount of employee turnover that we're having because of retirements and the shortage of teachers. We need somebody to focus on this. And we're right now splitting it up among many people, and so it's really becoming a coordination problem. And so we're showing, we did add communication specialists, which we're very thankful for. And we believe that this is another place that we have a glaring weakness. But we want to make sure we're explaining to the community that we've saved $877,000 absent $48. Over the last several years in terms of cumulative savings of salary. So we're trying to bring some of that back, which would be adding up to another $151,000. But overall, we feel like we have been very responsible with the taxpayers' money. And we feel like this is something that is definitely a need. And so what we are asking is for the permission to move forward with this and to post a position. We had a job description that we had provided a previous meeting, and I apologize we didn't put that on here this time. But we can send that out to you if this moves forward. But this person would be a 12-month person. They would have formal training in human resources, and they would coordinate all of the, as I said, employee insurance, intake, payroll. I mean, they wouldn't provide payroll, but they would communicate with payroll. Trainings, leave days, all sorts of those things that we currently have other people doing. And then some of those people that would be doing that would be freed up to do other things that have been left absent due to other positions that have been left vacant. So.
How many employees do we have now?
Exact number would be very difficult for me to say right now, but it's 600.
682?
Yeah, it's in the 650 to 690.
We have over 600 employees and
Yes.
we don't have a human resources.
Right, we don't have one person, no, and it's become difficult. Yeah, so, we're just south of 700.
I could see the need for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very glad we're doing this. I've been pushing for this for probably 3 decades. Because I really feel it shouldn't be our responsibility to train someone to do human resources, let them have that as their interest before they come to us and have received the training, and hopefully at some university level, and can start with us immediately, knowing the pitfalls and the laws appropriate for that position.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
So, tonight, we're not looking for a motion or anything, I just need to know if it's, by acclamation, if it's okay if we posted a position and saw if we could find any qualified applicants.
Did we approve the job description that you presented?
No, we did
So
not.
we would have to
We would
do
have
that.
to do that as well. So we'll put that on next month to be done.
Okay.
Based on the feedback we got last time, I doubt we would have any changes to that, but just so for those of you that have seen it before. Thank you.
Next, consider approval of a trip request for FFA. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any questions about that?
Beach is nice.
The leadership team is going to go to Gary, Indiana for.
Well, I'm sure that's outside Gary.
Well, right.
The dunes.
The dunes, Indiana dunes.
Nice.
If there's no questions, Allison?
Thanks. Cervantes.
Aye.
Lyon.
Yes.
Phelps.
Aye.
Rodriguez. Sherpy.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Next, Discussion regarding the health insurance plan. Mrs. Ham.
Member Shipley, do you want to talk about this?
I can.
Okay, I mean, I can talk about it, or this is your committee.
Yeah, I sat in the committee for the insurance committee, and one of the things that was presented was changing the options of insurance. And I believe what we're looking at doing, or recommending doing, is adding, not just if you have one child, changing that from child to children, so that you can, pay the same amount and have all your children insured.
And the employee plus spouse.
And then for cost-saving reasons, because we are self-insured and we have to, be, fiscally responsible for our insurance policies, is looking at changing, I forget what
The employee plus spouse tier would go away.
Right.
And so if you.
It'd be just 3 options. instead
Right,
of
so
4.
if you just had you and your spouse on there, you would go to family coverage.
Yes.
Instead of employee plus spouse, because industry-wide spouses typically cost more. Even though here they don't. But that could always happen, at any one time.
So what's the third thing then?
It's employee plus child or children, employee and family.
So we currently have 4 tiers. So we have employee only, employee plus spouse, employee plus child, so you can only have 1 child, or then you have to go to full family if you have your spouse and your children, or if you have more than 1 child. So we're looking at moving to 3 tiers, which would be employee only, employee plus child or children, and then family. So it was a compromise from implementing either a spousal surcharge or a spousal carve-out. So a spousal surcharge is if your spouse has insurance available to him or her at their employer, there would be a surcharge, typically $100, $150 a month to remain on our insurance. A spousal carve-out would say if your employer offers insurance, you're not allowed on our policy. So when the committee kind of discussed it, they felt that moving to the 3 tiers really achieved that, so that there would be financial benefit for somebody who's offered insurance to their employer, if it was just an employee plus their spouse, to go on their employer's insurance versus having to go on full family through ours. So to achieve kind of both of those things without having to pass or recommend a surcharge or a carve-out. So this committee is only an advisory committee. So at this point, because there was some discussion about it might contradict language that's in the current GEA bargaining agreement, the GEA is considering, and we believe will pass, a memorandum of understanding that will allow us to go from the 4 tiers to 3 tiers. That should be ready by the July 8th board meeting, and then we'll be looking to the board to take action to formally go from 4 tiers to 3. So we wanted to make sure we had the memorandum of understanding before the board voted on it, so that we know that we have all of our ducks in a row on this side before passing something and then having to negotiate it retroactively.
Does the 205 insurance, if the spouse has first insurance, does the 205 insurance allow secondary on the employee?
It does. It does. It does have coordination of benefits.
Would it be possible at the next meeting to see actual monthly premiums, so we know what the numbers?
Oh, sure.
Currently
Yeah,
exist
that's
and
no
what they
problem.
would become?
And I can just tell you, in general, currently, employee plus spouse and the employee plus children is somewhere in the neighborhood of $618 a month, and then the family is $924 a month, somewhere in that ballpark. So the $618 for the employee plus spouse would go to the $924, but then those individuals that are the employee only, that have multiple children, will go from the $924 down to the $618. Am I close on my numbers?
938, somewhere.
Okay.
Pretty good.
And, you know, our language in our contract speaks very specifically to how and when we can change these tiers, and so it pertains directly to what our percentage of our fund balance is left. So we're trying to act proactively at a time when we do have a healthy fund balance, but that the amount has gone down, which we knew it would when we changed the plan last year because of some things that were going on with the previous third-party administrator. So, you know, we had to pay out some old claims and do some other things. So we're still in good shape, but we are trying to get us in better shape for the future.
And starting next month, the board will receive a 36-month rolling look back on our fund balance for our medical trust. So right now we have $3,765,000 approximately in there. But because there are some triggers of when premiums could go up or when premiums need to go down, I think having that kind of rolling 36-month look back would be just something quick for everyone to look at. So we'll have that ready for you next month, and it'll just update monthly.
Who's underwriting our insurance then? For self-insurance, who's underwriting us?
So we have UMR, and then we have Symetra for our reinsurance. So one of the concerns that kind of brought up this situation is that we've had several high dollar claimants this year. Those high dollar claimants will probably continue in the future. And so Symetra is looking at potentially increasing our rates pretty significantly. And so instead of lasering those individuals out or, you know, potentially looking at raising that stop loss premium, you know, much higher than it already is, we wanted to see if we can make small incremental changes in the plan without having to affect plan design.
And we may go out, Sun Life did give us a quote that was much cheaper than Symetra for the reinsurance and the
That's what we used to
aggregate.
have.
Yeah, and that, those are, I mean, as far as anybody on our end, they don't know, I mean, it doesn't matter, it's a back-end situation, you know, for the user, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And so that's very clearly for us, you want to go with low bid because there's no benefit, it's just whoever's paying out the reinsurance claim. So we're being pretty aggressive on those looks as well.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay. Next up, agenda, we have our personnel. Do I have a motion to consider approval of the personnel report?
So moved.
Second.
Did everybody get their questions answered regarding the report? Allison?
Cervantes.
Aye.
Lyon.
Yes.
Phelps.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Sherpy.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Banks.
Aye. And then our grievance update, Dr. Estlin.
Thank you. I'm sad to report that 2 of our grievances were not able to avoid arbitration, and those have been filed with the AAA, and those grievances both revolve around evaluation, and we could not find common accord. I ultimately denied their claims, and those have gone to arbitration. One involves a specific individual, and the other involves kind of a general claimant because of claims made that our administrators did not follow procedures identically. Our counterclaim was that that's not their call to do them identically. People aren't identical, situations aren't identical, and that we operated within the confines of the contract. And so we could not reach accord on those, as I said. So of the 3 that we had outstanding, 1 was resolved, I should say that. Actually, I sided with the union in terms of their claims regarding certain documents that needed to be filed with a needs improvement rating. It did not affect anybody's overall rating, so it was really pretty minor. So 1 was resolved very easily, and the other 2 have not. And those sit at the American Arbitration Association, and we await their notice for trying to pick an arbitrator, and that will probably take 6 months. So I'll be giving you updates, maybe with not a lot of update for a few months, but that's where they sit. Any questions?
I'm glad you defined it AAA, because most people think.
The American Automotive Association?
Cars about to get towed.
Yeah, that's the American, they should have different, like, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. But, no, the American Arbitration Association, they're not gonna come fix your flat tire. They'll argue over who has to do it and then pick a third party.
And then charge you a lot.
And then charge you a lot of money.
Sorry, Luke.
Luke loves it. Luke's fixing up an old house out in the country. He's all excited now.
Okay, we have reached the end of our meeting. Comments by members of the board. Member Walters.
None.
Member Rodriguez.
No comments.
Member Sherpy.
The end of the school year, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
The recognition of all of our students tonight, that's exciting things to see. Recognition of Mrs. Kelly. One of the things I did prior to this meeting is I went to the library and looked at the old newspapers of when she was elected. And I thought that was pretty cool, because as I was scrolling through the microfilm, trying to find the date that she got elected, she was elected in April of '69. That happens to be about a year after Martin Luther King was assassinated in April of '68. And I can just imagine what was going through her mind, wanting to make a change that he spoke so passionately about. And she did have some quotes in the paper. She said, "School board ideas and attitudes must be changed to bring about a better representation for the general public. Public education should meet the needs of all children." And today we moved one step further up the ladder towards eradication of misunderstanding and problems facing our community. And I just appreciate the history of what she had done and the position that she was in at the time. And then, I don't know, 3 months after she was elected, we landed on the moon. So it kind of puts everything, she's not just somebody's mother. She was somebody who lived through history and made a change.
Thank you, Member Sherpy. Member Banks. Member Phelps. Member Lyon.
Per policy, we're supposed to review boundaries every year, and we haven't done it this year, and I'm glad we're not. But I did have a member of the community ask me about boundaries just 2 days ago. I said, oh, because with all the school changing, she wanted my child to be at the same school next year. I hope I wasn't overstepping things, but I said, we're not looking to change any boundaries for next year. But probably the community needs to hear that message, and what our plan is moving forward, and when we'll be doing that. And that's probably Amy's responsibility to make sure that story gets out. Because this was a woman who says she watches our meetings, and she had that question. So I was glad we did act on our policies tonight in gifted education, pushing the pudding. And then just last reflection on the insurance fund. I sat in this room many months when I had reported that we had $150,000 in our insurance fund. It's nice to see it's closer to $4 million, so we're able to accommodate the needs of our staff. Thank you.
I want to just take a brief moment to really thank the fact that we were able to honor Mrs. Kelly tonight. I think that it was wonderful that we were able to do that, and it being 50 years later, and there being so many, as Member Sherpy has just mentioned, so many important defining moments of our history, and that we can recognize those here 50 years later, and that in some capacity our school district was part of that history. And her words still ring true. We still have those goals as a school district, and we need to continue to fight for those and work toward those, from those of us that sit at this table all the way down, and beyond to everybody that we were honored, that we were able to honor here tonight. You know, our administrators, our principals, our teachers, our crossing guards, our students. How are we living up and, you know, and to Mrs. I don't want to tear her name up.
Kelly Arwula.
Thank you. You know, to her request and challenging us to live and work in her mother's memory and to carry forth that legacy. I think it's extremely important. And as I mentioned when I introduced her, part of the reason that I ran for this board is that legacy there, and I didn't even know it. So thank you once again, fine folks in the gallery, for sticking with us. I will continue to laugh and take the jest and teasing in good faith. It's not my fault my meetings are so long.
I hope our meeting did start at 5:30 this evening.
Yes, it did. Yes. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.